Carl Jung describes the shadow as a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. This act is the essential condition for any kind of self-knowledge. In this quote, Carl Jung is clarifying what the shadow is, the dark aspects of the personality, the repressed, suppressed, or disowned qualities of the conscious self. Towards the end of the quote, he also highlights the importance of recognizing these aspects in order to gain a greater self-knowledge. Now, you may be wondering, what relevance does this have in modern times? To answer this question, I'd like to move the focus onto the idea of humanity's collective shadow as opposed to the shadow of the individual. I will now read another quote from Carl Jung. However, this time he is describing humanity's black collective shadow. "Man has done these things. I am man, who has his share of human nature. Therefore I am guilty with the rest, and bear unaltered and indelibly within me the capacity and the inclination to do them again at any time. None of us stands outside humanity's black collective shadow." In this quote, Jung highlights the fact that because of our share of human nature, everyone is capable of evil, and thus none of us stand outside humanity's collective shadow, the shadow being the qualities of the conscious self that many of us disown. An earlier quote from the same passage helps to establish how disowning these qualities of the conscious self can manifest itself in our attitudes towards others. Carl Jung says, "And by refusing to recognize the evil that is part of every human, we point to others instead as evil." This is tied into the 4 ways Jung says that the human being deals with the shadow. In this case, this quote is linked to both denial and projection. I think it is important in today's society that we practice introspection and acknowledge that we are not perfect and thus are capable of evil or less favorable actions. From what I have seen online, it seems as though people are quick to condemn individuals for saying the wrong thing or for making a mistake, even though it is likely that if they held themselves to the same standard they hold the individual they are criticizing so harshly to, they would find that in their past they may have done or said things that according to their criteria would warrant an equally harsh attack. So, by understanding Carl Jung's idea of the collective shadow, we can acknowledge the capacity to do evil within all of us. In my opinion, this leads to a greater understanding of others and ourselves, and allows us to build a more accurate picture of events. For example, instead of simply seeing one side of the argument as evil, we can recognize the fault of our own side, and then use that to help us become more informed and also to better negotiate with others. For a blind naivety that our side is totally just and innocent will stop any sort of progress and will often lead to us not being willing to compromise on our ideas in order to reach a solution that is mutually beneficial but may require your side to admit some fault. So, in this sense, the idea of the collective shadow can be used by a group, perhaps a political party or a mob, to examine themselves and acknowledge their wrongdoing in order to prevent horrible consequences that may arise if they simply continue to march on, blindly believing that they are right and incapable of evil or wrongdoing. Furthermore, the word cancelled has been floating around a lot recently, in the context of cancelling celebrities or internet personalities for past actions. While I don't think these mistakes should be ignored, especially if they are deeply offensive, I also think it's important to understand that people can change, and to really consider someone's apology, and not to simply try to act as though because their past action was not good, that is a true and honest reflection of their current state, as this restricts the ability for people to make meaningful change and grow as individuals, as the mob is too focused on condemning them only to condemn them further when they admit fault, as if those who are criticizing them are perfect and are incapable of evil. Or to use the idea of the shadow, they are refusing to acknowledge their capacity for evil and are thus putting that onto others through the idea of projection. To summarize, I think it is important now especially that we practice introspection and acknowledge our capacity for evil and use that as fuel to approach things with a more nuanced perspective as opposed to a strict dualism that your side is good and the enemy is evil.